Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Today I have Larry Guzzardo with me. Larry's the co-founder of All Star Dental Academy, and I've had the pleasure of seeing him speak multiple times. And Larry, you constantly am inspired by how well you speak. And in fact, it was you and Eric Vickery that had Eric and I down there a day early for the Speak Like an All-Star training. I love the voices. I love the interaction with the audience. And I would love to know what brought you to there. And I know that 10 years ago you've co-founded All Star. Tell me your origin story. I love a good story.
A lot of people ask me that story because they're always curious, because I don't have a dental background. How is it that you ended up in dentistry? Because it's such a great profession. I used to be a trainer for a large corporation, and I studied management in college. And I did training for this large corporation, very, very big. At the time, they were doing about $2 billion,
Wow.
even in those days. So it was a really, really big data processing company. I trained our client service reps and I trained our installation technicians who went out and installed software in the client's office. But from being in a training and development environment, I met these trainers, these consultants who work with dental practices. Now, I work for a corporation that my division alone had 2,200 employees. So you
Wow.
can
Yeah.
imagine when I met these dental consultants, I'm like, so who are you training? Like 5 people? What are you doing over there? And I listened to their story and I realized they're accomplishing with 5 people what we were having an enormous amount of difficulty getting done with 2,200, because the gears just wind very, very slowly in a big organization. So to make a long story short, they got me to come and work for them. And so I left my big cushy corporate job and I went to go work for a dental consulting company. It was the best decision that I ever made. I really enjoyed it. Dennis and I got along because I understood business and I was learning a lot about dentistry. I thought it was very fascinating and all that. I really, really enjoyed it. And just to, for time's sake, the company dissolved. So here I was with them about 2 or 3 years at the time, and all of a sudden I was pretty much out of a job. And I enjoyed what I was doing, but I was concerned because I'm not a dentist. I wasn't a hygienist at the time. I wasn't a dental assistant. I didn't have that background. How could I continue this? So I did it the old fashioned way. I bought my way in. I paid the company to use their material. And so I went off on my own, and that was in 1994. So I spent literally my whole career in dentistry. Many times I feel like I could be a dentist. I know if you can get that lateral pterygoid to calm down, your life's a lot easier. Uh, but I really like dentistry. I like what we can accomplish in dentistry. I like the teams that are in dentistry, and I like dentists. So we all get along real well. It's been a great, fabulous career. And because of my involvement in dentistry, I was asked to speak at the Florida Dental Convention. That was just 10 years ago. And at that time, Alex and Heather Nottingham were attending one of my lectures. And when it was through, they asked if I would want to be interviewed for what they called their expert webinars at that time. Today, we'd call them a podcast. And I looked at their website and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. I don't really know what the two of you do, but I liked what I saw. And I said, I'll do your expert webinar, but then I really want to talk to you about doing business together. And that's how I'll just say we birthed All Star. It probably took us about 2 years after that. And then we launched like about 8 years ago this month. So
That's so
that's
amazing.
how it all started. It's like an American love story, you know.
That's so great. When you branched off, who was your first client?
My very, very first client was a gentleman in Pennsylvania, a really, really
Hmm.
small town where lots of Amish people live. So it was
Okay.
a new experience for me because I hadn't met individuals before who didn't drive cars or have alarm clocks. And for us in dentistry, they didn't have bank accounts, so they didn't write checks, and things like that. So it was a real test of communication and things like that. But that was my very, very first client.
I know that where we're going is impactful, and I know that our mission statements and all those things, but I love to hear a good story about how someone got started. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, from 94 to 10 years ago to today, what are you seeing as the trends in the industry? Like, and what's next, if you will? What's read the tea leaves by Larry
yeah.
Guzzardo.
If I look at what's going on now, what I've always liked about dentistry is there's always something going on.
Hmm.
And I know the media likes to hype things up and make things sound one way or the other, but I'll say it's all good. All of it is good. Um, and it's good for dentists. It's good for the public. It's good for you and I. It's all great things. But I'll say one of the big things that I think would be interesting, for your listeners, is I think that if, if the next phase of patient engagement is going to be digitizing everything.
Hmm.
Dentistry's always been a little bit slow to move in that direction. But after the pandemic, when people became used to clicking to pay their bill, clicking to contact the office, using something like this to communicate with one another, now they don't want to fill out forms by hand and they don't want to download forms and things like that. So I would say your payment systems, your contact systems, any paperwork that needs to be done. Let's throw away the clipboards. Let's get it all digitized. Let's get it all automated.
Hmm.
Don't make people have to write their name more than one time on one piece of paper. Once they do it, it should go where it needs to go. And now we have that technology. Before we didn't have the public who was willing to embrace the technology. But now what I notice is the public is like, you don't have this?
Hmm.
It's kind of like when you were slow to get a website. People used to be like, what do you mean you don't have a website? Now they're like, of course I expect that you have a website. But what they expect now is, why don't you have all the forms on your website? And why can't I just fill them out on your
Yeah.
website? And so I think the next level of patient experience really is going to be that part of it. If I'm doing my medical history update, if I'm updating the pharmaceuticals that, the drugs that I'm taking, prescriptions, I should be able to do all that online directly. So I think digitizing is going to be really, really important. I
Yeah.
think another trend that's going on that we hear a lot about, whether it's good or not, I don't know, but there is a lot with private equity getting into dentistry. I look at it as, private equity has flipped every other business in the country.
It's our
They've flipped
turn.
all the veterinary offices, all the medical offices, all the
Optometrist.
hospitals, all the real estate firms, drugstores, flower shops, funeral homes. They're all owned by large corporations now, you know? And so now they're just taking their turn in dentistry. And so they're flipping dental practices. And
Hmm.
so they're offering a lot of people a lot of money. I don't know if it's a good thing for dentistry or not. I can't say personally it's been a good thing for hospitals and for healthcare. I can't say that it's better because of their involvement, but I know it's not going to go away. The reason why I'm bringing it
Right.
up is because I don't think we have to be afraid of it. I don't feel like we have to get
Agreed.
into it if we don't want to, but we don't need to be afraid of it. And the reason why we don't need to be afraid of it is because there are things that we could take advantage of today like they have. Part of that is we could get into buying cooperatives, what I mean, so that we can get some of the discounts that they get for equipment and
Hmm. Hmm.
supplies. It's very easy to do that today. Years ago, this was something difficult, but it's not that hard anymore. And so, if we can get into more buying co-ops and things like that, we'll have some of the advantages. Those co-ops could also offer you advantages in dealing with third-party payers like insurance companies. That's another trend that I see going on. We have a lot of issues with expenses today. We
Yep.
have a lot of issues with low reimbursements and maximums that are not increasing. Maybe they'll increase a code here and there, but we're not seeing maximums go up and haven't gone up in years. I've talked to clients before. I said, when they set the maximums in dentistry of $1,000, which is about which most people have, they have about $1,000 worth
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
dentistry that they can get every year. That number was set back in the 70s. I mean,
Right.
over 50 years ago. And so if we would index that for inflation, that same $1,000 would be worth about $7,800 today. And if you think about it, 50 years ago, if you needed a lot of dentistry, over 2, 3, 4 years, if you had $1,000 a year, you could get it all done.
Right.
Well, same thing today. If it had been indexed for inflation, and you had about $7,000 to spend over 2, 3, 4 years, you could get all your dentistry. Today, you cannot.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost get no
Right.
dentistry
Okay.
done for the amount of reimbursement. So the
Yeah.
problem is we have rising expenses. There's no debate about it. There's been many times in my career where we debated whether things were as expensive as they were. Today, we know it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Staffing is expensive. Benefits are expensive. Supplies, technology. It's all very, very continuing
Getting
education.
through school is expensive.
Yep, it's all very, very expensive. Yet, has that maximum budged? No,
Not a bit.
it hasn't. Not really. The needle has
Mhm.
barely moved, you know? And so because of it, now you do have to consider your third party payer participation. I'm not saying that you have to get out of insurance totally, but you definitely need to consider whether you can afford it or not, because there's definitely some plans out there that I see that don't pay that much. And matter of fact, they reimburse less than your cost to
Yeah.
delivering the service, you know? And so that's a big challenge today. And I think every dentist has to address it. They have to
Mhm.
look at it. They have to understand
Agreed.
their operating expenses and whether they could really afford to participate with insurance or not. Um, another issue that I think a trend that we're seeing in dentistry, and this is a really good one, is our population is getting older, and because of it, they care about keeping their teeth.
Hmm.
But they also care about their whole body. They want to get older, but they want to be healthier in their old age. Not like our grandparents who accepted that they were old and they couldn't move around, and they
Hmm.
accepted
Hmm.
that they would just stay in the house and not drive or go anywhere. We're getting older, we're retiring younger, and we're living longer, but we expect to be healthier in our old age. And so any office
Yeah,
that has a slant toward wellness in their practice is going to have an advantage with patients.
I agree. As you're talking it, I read a statistic the other day that the fastest growing population that is having divorces is in their 60s.
Really?
And yes, it is the fastest growing population of divorcees
Right.
because you are retiring
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking around. And where it used to be, I mean, I'm just kind of getting ready to die, now you're like, I've got 15, 20 more good years. I don't want to be spending it with this
Not
person.
for
You've been
this.
grinding me down for 5 decades.
Yeah. So they're kicking them to the curb.
So they're getting divorced in their 60s.
Yeah.
And it's such a wild number, but you're right. Like, we are seeing more and more people absolutely invest heavily in their dental in their 60s and 70s and 80s, that more than ever. It's a wild to think about that we've opened up that population. I have a hot topic in my world, and I want to go back to the first trend you talked about digitizing all the things.
Mhm.
I want to talk about online scheduling.
Okay.
I know why it's not done, because everyone thinks their schedule is this very unique unicorn that no one can schedule like I schedule, and I'm only going to do these things at this time. And I know that online scheduling can mess that up.
Right.
But the population of the United States wants to schedule online. And dentistry has lagged behind restaurants. We've lagged behind my optometrist appointment. We've lagged behind dang near everybody. Why do you think online scheduling hasn't caught on quicker?
Well, part of it, I think, is because going to a dental office is a unique experience. It is.
Okay.
Number two, I think it's because people need very specific things, but maybe they don't think they need it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like you've been diagnosed with periodontal disease, and so you require periodontal maintenance therapy, but you don't schedule yourself for that.
Right.
And
You schedule cleaning.
yeah,
Right.
And so they just want to schedule themselves for whatever they can, and then they show up at the office, and we realize you scheduled, for the wrong thing. Um,
Mm, mm,
but
mm.
but if I look at the airlines who are really really good at what you're talking about, they know we have so many seats in this fare class, we have so many seats up front, we have so many in the back. They have done a really good job of designating where Larry can schedule
Mhm,
when I buy
mhm.
my ticket. And I think when the online schedulers for dentistry, when they become that sophisticated as well, whereas the way I see it happening, Eric, is it'll probably start with hygiene first, because
Mhm,
there we
mhm.
can designate you're a prophy patient, a typical recall patient, or maybe you're a perio maintenance patient. And so that way we can designate when you call to schedule or when you get online.
Right. We can probably use the last time you came in and the
Yes,
some 3, 4, 5 data points
right.
to determine. Yeah.
The other issue is that I do see dental practices as very unique places, and the services that they provide are very, very unique as well. And so when it comes to a new patient, what we haven't done with the automatic scheduling is we haven't created an experience for that patient. I think a lot of dentists would be afraid to say, maybe I'm not the right dentist for you, but you just schedule an appointment in my office. And,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
now we find out I'm not what you're looking for, because all dentists practice differently.
Right, right.
And so, you know what I mean? And I think it still requires that phone call initially, so that we can talk to the patient, so that we can discuss with them about who we are, the way we do it, and find out if that's appropriate for the patient. But I do see
Mhm.
it, if I'm answering your question, I see it as something coming down the pike. We're going to be better at guiding patients into the appointment that they need.
Yeah, and I don't think that online scheduling has to take away the new patient experience, the new patient phone call, and getting the forms and having a conversation about hey Larry, I saw you schedule an appointment for this. Tell me when last time you've been at the dentist is. How would you rate your overall health currently, and what are you looking for? And I love that conversation before someone comes into the
Well,
practice.
I feel like that's where AI is going to come in
Hmm.
a lot.
Mm,
Now, AI will be able to read those forms, and it'll know what questions to ask next and how to start
yeah.
communicating with that person. Right now, I feel like we just haven't gotten to that level yet. And
Hmm. Hmm.
that's why dentists are very, very slow to adopt to letting it take over their schedule. Because I think you can say this type of procedure gets scheduled at that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can't say that Larry needs it or doesn't need it without a conversation because Larry's self-diagnosing at that point.
Right, right. And
Right.
I do
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of individuality in a lot of
Hmm.
offices, a lot of uniqueness. And so for many dentists, they want the patient to pick for themselves, am I the right person for you?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't want to say good or bad, but there's some dentists who are very, very detail oriented, maybe take as long as an hour just to examine you. Whereas there's other dentists who might only examine you, they might do an initial examination as a part of an initial hygiene visit. Two
Yeah.
completely different kinds of appointments. Different
Agreed.
patients are attracted to different things.
Hmm. Hmm. We say when we are marketing a practice, I am not marketing procedures. I'm not marketing prepless veneers. I'm not marketing implants. I'm not marketing crowns. I am marketing the dentist is the product, and the connection that they make with patients is what I'm marketing.
Yes.
And you're going to connect with someone different. Statistically now, we want a dentist within 10 years our own age. And I think that's because as someone who's 48, I think I'm close to my prime. I want someone who's been around long enough to have had experiences, but still have relevant education. I, in very candor, I do not know that I would go to a 75-year-old dentist. I might go to someone 30, 32
Yeah.
if I thought they were exceptional,
Yeah. Depending on
but
how
I
they
want to
recruit.
go to someone. I want to go to someone who is around my age because I this is where I'm at in my career. And Kristen, who you talked to, on the pre-show, she has a very young dentist, and she thinks they're amazing because they focus on the technology and they do have some of the features and amenities that she likes. Which I want someone who has done this 10,000 times.
Yes, yes. So that's where some of the things that you do is so important, because we would need what you do to convey to the patient that they're selecting the right dentist for them.
Hmm.
Right
Hmm.
now, without it, the only way we know how to do it is by talking to the patient.
Right.
But you can
And
see now,
typically is in the office. Yeah.
digitizing things, yes, you could use your
Hmm.
website to attract the right kinds of patients to you that are appropriate for you, because they could see you have the
Yeah.
technology. They see that you have the education. They look at your staff. And
Hmm.
so they could use something like that to help patients schedule their home appointment. But they would need to have that in place
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Agreed.
make that happen. Otherwise, the problem is we're not going to find out that this was not appropriate for you until you're sitting in the dentist chair.
Hmm.
Now
Hmm.
that it would be enormously a big expensive mistake to have that happen maybe more than once, or maybe twice a month.
Yeah. Now, Larry, I got one final question for you. When you've been around 1994, amazing career. It's such a pleasure to watch you speak. What do you see as the biggest problem your offices are facing today when it comes to the patient experience?
The biggest issue that's coming up when it comes to the patient experience is, unfortunately, the training of the staff.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about the skills as being a hygienist, or the skills of being a dental assistant, or somebody who knows how to post checks or whatever. I'm talking about those relationship skills that the staff has. Like, do
Hmm.
they know how to handle, uh, I'll just say, sticky conversations with patients? You know what I mean? Not necessarily objections, but sticky conversations, because patients are more savvy today. So they'll come in
Hmm.
and they'll challenge you, am I safe in this office? You know, do you sterilize things correctly? Do you warranty your work? We better know how to answer those questions for people. So I'll say one of the biggest challenges is the old fashioned communication. But it's not that we don't know how to talk. We just don't know how to explain things in a way that helps the patient feel more comfortable choosing us.
I totally agree. I think it's the soft skills. And I think there's a couple of converging factors at play. I think number one, with the staff shortages, I find today dentists are almost scared to hold their staff accountable sometimes.
Yeah.
And then at the coming in the other direction, you have patients are more educated, and I have to use educated carefully because I think they're very misguided sometimes, but
Yeah.
they are asking more questions in educated. And I think that you have dentistry experts who are, as they get busy, they default to answering a question that they think they understand the context of. And I'll give you an example. Like, I think the insurance question is an incredibly complex question that you need to get behind before you say, yes, we take that insurance, or no, we don't. I, if I need $7,000 in dentistry, I promise you, you do not care about my $1,000. The office will find a way to work around the $1,000 insurance maximum. I agree. I think it's the education around the soft skills of patient engagement. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. And we have a lot of issues today with employees because they never learned a lot of these things when they were children, because maybe parenting, maybe their education. These are things that we get directly from them that they tell us now.
Hmm.
That I wish we would have got this when I was in the fourth grade. But we're struggling with it now because real leadership today is teaching them those skills that they didn't get all those years, that patients are expecting that you have. Because
Agreed.
dentistry is going to cost $7,000, you're going to have to feel really good about spending that money in this.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's how you communicate.
Larry, thank you so much for your time, enlightening us always. Larry Guzzardo,
Yeah.
co-founder of All Star
Anytime.
Dental Academy. That was your bite of dental marketing.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure, Eric. And anytime you want to talk, I'd be happy to come back on.